Good morning, welcome. However you find yourself to this video today, I am so glad, I'm so thankful. God has put a word in my heart today that I feel is very applicable and is something that will really make you think, and it's something that I know I've learned a lot just by studying what God is trying to tell me through the message for this week. So the passage that I'm going to be reading out of today, the main passage is going to be Genesis 21, verses 14 through 20. Now, I'm going to provide some context while you guys are pulling this up with your Bible, just so you guys can have some time to flip to it. It shouldn't take too long, but there is a lot of background to this story. There's a lot that happens before the scenes of where we see it picking up right now. So I'm going to provide some of that story. So, a lot of people know of a man named Abraham. And this is a man who I've mentioned a few times in my past messages before, but essentially Abraham was not always called Abraham. There was a time where he was called Abram by God, and now this is the time before he was called by God. This is the time before he humbled himself before the Lord. So Abram was married to somebody named Sarai. And Sarai was having a very hard time conceiving a child. So, as the Jewish custom for back then, Sarai came to Abram and said, I want you to take my slave woman, marry her also. Her name is Hagar. You marry her also, and you have children with her because I cannot conceive. So, Abram did what Sarai asked. He married Hagar, and he was able to conceive a son underneath Hagar. Now, once Hagar became pregnant, she started to mistreat and act in a bad way towards her master Sarai because she felt entitled. She felt like she was the more important of the two wives, and so you could see this by the way that Hagar was acting. So Sarai comes to Abram and says, what am I to do with my slave woman? And Abram essentially just says, that is not my problem. And now Abram is smart here because he doesn't want to step in between his two wives. That would be bad. If he's put himself in that place and where he's having to pick between his two wives, I don't blame the man. But since Hagar was Sarai's slave, he said, you treat her and you do with her as you see fit. So Sarai ends up mistreating Hagar very badly to the point where Hagar just says, you know what, I'm not going to take this anymore, I'm going to run away. So Hagar flees, Hagar runs away, and it is out in her time of fleeing that she gets a message from God. God comes and talks to her, an angel comes and talks to her and tells her that she needs to go back to Abram and Sarai. So she goes back to Abram and Sarai. She lives with them for a while, but during this time, Abram and Sarai were converted to Abraham and Sarah. As we know them now, that's what they're most popular for. And so, under this, God blessed Sarah and allowed her to conceive a baby. So now there's even more drama because Hagar's pregnant, Sarah's pregnant, and they're feuding with each other. So Abraham is at fault. He doesn't know what to do with the situation. So Sarah says that he should send away Hagar. And Abraham thinks about this for a while and decides against it. But an angel of God came and talked to Abraham and said, don't worry, sending her away is the right thing to do. So that's where we pick up in the story right here in Genesis 21, verses 14 through 20. I'm going to read the verses, and then I'll go in and break them down, and break down the story, break down the situation a little bit later. So let's go ahead and read. Genesis 21 verses 14 through 20 say, "Early the next morning, Abraham took some food and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar. He sent them on her shoulders and then sent her off with the boy. She went on her way and wandered in the desert of Beersheba." So at this point, Hagar had already given birth. She gave birth to a son named Ishmael, who has been called by God, who has been destined by God, because Abraham was destined by God to have blessing and have authority over all the nations on the earth that were to come later from his lineage. So Ishmael, being part of his bloodline, therefore gets that blessing as well. So Hagar was told a little bit earlier, sort of the prophecy, the calling that God has for Ishmael. So at this point, Ishmael was born, and Ishmael and Hagar went out and left. They were sent out with a few days' water and a few days of food. Verse 15 says, "When the water in the skin was gone, she put the boy under one of the bushes. Then she went off and sat down nearby, about a bow shot away, for she thought, 'I cannot watch the boy die.' And as she sat there, she began to sob. God heard the boy crying, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, 'What is the matter, Hagar? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Lift the boy up and take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation.' Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. So she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. God was with the boy as he grew up." So this story, I'm going to look at this story from two different angles. From the people and the place. Because in order for the calling, in order for the destiny that God has put in your life, you have to be with the right people in the right place in order for it to occur. Today's message that I'm going to be speaking about is destiny over destination, or the destination of destiny. So let's think about our destiny real quick, because destiny, a calling, a purpose, they all relate to one another, and they all are very important. A lot of people struggle with, what is my purpose in life? What am I here for? What is my destiny? What has God called into my life? And while I may not be able to answer that question, I may give you some comfort and some assurance about the place that God calls it in. Because a lot of us feel like we have to go somewhere, that we have to be somewhere in order for us to receive God's calling. And a lot of us feel like it has to be a perfect place. But God doesn't use a perfect place. He uses a purpose place. May not be perfect in our eyes, but it's the place where if we weren't put there, we couldn't carry out our purpose to the whole need. So, moving forward, I'm going to look at the people before the place, but looking at the people, I'm going to break it down to the mother and the son. So I hope that I will be able to see you back for the rest of the parts of this message. I'm going to be looking at the mother, then the son, and then the place that God calls our destiny to be in. I hope to see you back.